Hi, welcome to the half-life equation video for the question, how old is the world's oldest human drawing? So we had already talked about what our given and find are for this problem, and we use that to figure out which equation we want to use first. Since we are asked to find the elapsed time, that means we'll use equation A last since it has elapsed time in it. We're going to use equation B first, and we'll use that to solve for our HLC. So let's go ahead and get started by plugging in our initial amount and final amount into this equation here using our data. So our equation will then be 163 micrograms. I'll just leave the units out. Oops, 163 micrograms is equal to the initial amount, which is 320 micrograms over 2 raised to the power of HLC. All right, to isolate my unknown, if you have a fraction next to an equal sign, then you'll use cross multiplication. So we are going to go ahead and cross multiply. I'll put this value over 1 just to make it look like a fraction. Okay, so then the next line down, I'm going to have 163 times 2 raised to the power of HLC is equal to 1 times 320, which is just 320. All right, next inverse operation I use to isolate my unknown, which is the HLC, is I divide both sides by 163. I'll cross that out on that side. And now what I have is 2 raised to the power of HLC is equal to 320 divided by 163, which when I plug that into my calculator, I get 1.96. So when I divide these out, I get 1.96. Okay, now since I'm asked to find my unknown is a power, it's an exponent. To solve for that, I'll use the inverse operation of an exponent, which is a log with a base of 2. So what I'm using here to solve is log base 2 of 1.96 is equal to my HLC. Okay. And if you have a calculator like mine that you cannot change the log, the base of the log, this is log base 10, not base 2. So what I'm going to use is that property of logs that will help me do that. So for that, this equation, or this expression I should say, is equivalent to log of 1.96 with a base 10, which is the one my calculator have, divided by log of base 2, log base 10 of 2. So you take the log of the argument, or the big number, and divide that by the log of the base, or the small number, and we can go ahead and plug that into our calculator. So log of 1.96 divided by log of 2, and that gives me my HLC, which is 0.971. Remember that this HLC stands for half-life cycles. It's not the half-life. It tells you the number of half-lives that have passed in that given amount of time. All right, so that's just all equation 1. Okay, now we're going to take our HLC and we are going to plug it into the second equation, equation A, which is the one we're going to use second, since that's where our find is. We're asked to find the elapsed time. So let's go ahead and I'm going to take this information up here. Okay, now this equation, I have my HLC, so I'm going to plug that in, which we got from down here, 0.971. And that is, so my HLC is equal to my elapsed time over half-life. My elapsed time is what I'm asked to find. And my half-life, I'm given 75,000 years. So once again, I'm going to use my inverse operations to solve. My unknown is in that numerator there. So since I have a fraction next to an equal sign, I can use cross multiplication as a quick shortcut. All right, so when I cross multiply it, I get 0.971 times 75,000 is equal to 1 times the elapsed time, or just the elapsed time. And I go ahead and I plug that into my calculator. And that gives me this value here, which is 72,814. Now, if we're using sig figs here, since we only have 2 sig figs in this value, I would just round that to 73,000. So I'll show you what I mean by that. The number I got in my calculator was this, 72,814, but I'm going to round it using sig figs, which we'll practice more later, and that will give you 73,000. Final thing is we want to check the units. So the elapsed time, we need a unit for time. Now, in our given information, the only other value that has time in it is half-life. We're going to have to use the same time that you find in a half-life. So this will be in years. Okay, so the answer to that question, how old is the world's oldest human drawing, is 73,000 years.